Well, I think it's a threat to global security generally. I think Russia and China right now have an entente underway. It may not be a formal alliance. It may not be an axis yet, but they're covering each other. China's providing economic aid directly and indirectly to the Russians in their concern about the sanctions over Ukraine. I think China would expect Russia to do the same if it decided to go after Taiwan. And in the area where they have overlapping interests, they have Russia and Europe, China in the Indo-Pacific. In the Middle East, where they have overlapping interests, their preferred partner is Iran. So it's a kind of three-way arrangement that I do think has global implications, but certainly in the Middle East endangers every country other than Iran.
The current administration called Russia's growing ties with Iran a profound threat. So how do you see that relationship evolving into the future?
Well, I'm very worried the Iran-Russia relationship will grow closer. And, I think it just stands to reason that relieved from international sanctions, a richer, stronger Iran will grow closer to Russia. So it's a good example of how the Biden administration's policies are internally inconsistent. By helping free Iran from the economic sanctions, it makes it a better partner for Russia.
When it comes to the Iran nuclear deal, what's your own estimates on a timeline here? This has dragged on for months. Talks have been underway for years. How soon before pen is actually put to paper, in your view?
Well, it could come at any time. I think what's holding it up is Iran demanding more concessions. I think in Tehran, the general view is that they mishandled the negotiation. If they had only asked for more, they'd have gotten practically everything they've asked for. And they're trying to think of new things to ask at the last minute. And so it's really only limited by how ambitious they are. And the fact is the administration has released some of the pressure on the enforcement of sanctions. So we've heard some pretty amazing figures for total sales to China over the last 18 months. Iran is not as stressed by the sanctions as it used to be. All that said, I think I could see it in the next 30 days.
And as for the Europeans, how would you characterize their handling of these negotiations?
Well, I think it's been really a poor performance by our friends in the European Union for close to 20 years over this thing. They're not the allies that are most threatened by Iran. This is one of the amazing things. The Biden administration has said it wants to strengthen America's alliance relationships. I support that objective. But the allies of the United States that are most worried about Iran are not Germany, France, and Britain. They're the Gulf Arab states and Israel. And those are the countries that I'm afraid the U.S. is selling out here by not taking into account the Iranian regime's ultimate objectives to get hegemony across the Middle East.
Reaction now with Giovanni Staunovo. He's a commodity analyst at UBS Wealth Management, joining us live from Zurich in Switzerland. And Gio, great to have you on today. Let's just begin with the Iran nuclear deal here. You heard there Ambassador Bolton saying we're now in a 30-day window for this deal to be reached. He also described it as a stunning mistake for the administration to continue to pursue this deal, saying it would be erroneous for them to rejoin this 2015 nuclear pact. But politics aside, what do you think the oil market implications are going to be if we see Iran rejoining the fold and those barrels coming back online?
First of all, probably we will see a price dip. But we should also be mindful that Iran is probably already exporting massively more than market analysis show. I've seen latest data indicating Iranian export this month above 1 million barrels per day. And the other important element is what Prince Abdulaziz, the Saudi energy minister, has lately said that OPEC stands ready to take action if it's required. So potentially they can offset by a production cut.
And that OPEC Plus meeting is coming up on September 5. Do you think OPEC will actually move forward with this suggested production cut if we did see the Iran deal actually taking shape?
I'm skeptical we get a deal in the next 5 days. So potentially for that meeting, I would still expect the group to stay on hold and keep production unchanged, depending also where the price level is. At current levels, that's my base case. But at the next meeting, depending if there is a deal or not a deal, then it's definitely a possibility. It also depends what happens in other parts of the world. We should also be mindful that the European Union comes up with sanctions against Russia, and that potentially might also lead in a production drop.